Hello and welcome to the DJ Force 10 in Conversation podcast, episode 170. My special guest on today's show is none other than Karl Middleton of Earthtone9. Yeah, what can I say about this band? They were huge for me when I was younger. I was an active street teamer for them. I actively promoted this band, and I'm doing it now. They're celebrating the 20th anniversary of Arc Tan Gent, which was one of their sort of pinnacle albums. They've got 4 albums, a couple of EPs, stuff like that out there. Go and check them out. Go listen to Arc Tan Gent. I can't employ enough to do this. Go onto the streaming sites, you know the ones, Spotify, Apple Music, Bandcamp, Tidal, YouTube, all those kind of sites. They all have it on there. Go and listen to Arc Tan Gent. It is a festival of the same name, by the way, for those that are in the know. And they were due to play it this year and play this album in its entirety. But now, obviously they can't do that with the COVID and everything. They are releasing Arc Tan Gent, or re-releasing Arc Tan Gent, as a 20th anniversary vinyl special. It's a double vinyl. It also includes the Omega EP as well, which they released just before they kind of split or went into hiatus. But they came back with a fun GoFundMe campaign, and they released another album and an EP, or reverse that, an EP than an album. And they toured with Pitch Shifter a couple of years ago when I was up in that Nottingham show, which is fantastic. And it was great seeing them again. And over the years, we've become friends and we've worked together and all that kind of stuff, acquaintances, whatever you want to call it. And this conversation, I should say, was absolutely brilliant. I absolutely loved it. It was just one of my, it's kind of a full circle thing for me, I believe, at this point, with the likes of 1 Minute Silence, Pitch Shifter and all that. These were all bands that I promoted back in the day. This was street teaming is going out, flyering, giving out promo cassettes, promo CDs, stickers, badges, lanyards, to people waiting in line at gigs like metal shows and stuff like that, and chatting to people about these bands. Because you don't know, people may not have heard of them. You give them a CD back then, you give them a CD and they're like, wow, a CD. And then they go home, they listen to it and they love it and they buy the album, stuff like that. Or cassette tape, if you will. And that promotion, that side of it. And now I'm kind of coming back full circle and chatting to them about that time and what they're doing now as well. That's kind of encompassed all these 20th anniversary chats I've had with a lot of these bands that were the sort of my bands for the day, if you will, of the day, sorry, I should say. And I just thank you for listening, guys. I really love it. The feedback I'm getting is amazing. Some people not even old enough to have remembered the band first time around are going and checking them out. 1 Minute Silence got a great bunch of people just going checking them out and oh wow, it's British Rage Against the Machine, one of them said, and I was like, yeah, but it's British, it's home. It's we were toe to toe with these bands at that point. We were making quality music. Not that we're not doing that now. We are making quality music now, but at that point there was a lot of corporate roll-ins from the States coming over and playing huge venues and stuff like that. But the music, the sound, the sort of what we had, the organicness of what we had was massive at the time. And it's absolutely brilliant to speak to these bands that were part of it. And I was a fan at that point. It was pre me being in a band. Later on, I did cover an Earthtone9 song with my band. We covered Vitriolic, HSF, and we released our first album on a sister label of Copro, which is where Earthtone9 were homed. And it's a whole big circle of music people that have kind of come round and how we've helped each other over the years and how we're still in contact as well. And being in contact with Karl over the years has been great. Just sort of he went over to the States as well. Kind of the sort of same path I did. I went over to the States for a bit. He went over to the States at different areas. He was over in Detroit. I was over in Florida. And then we're both back, and we're sort of having that experience and how music has helped us get out there and all that kind of good stuff. You'll hear about this in the interview and whatnot and the conversation. And I should stop calling it an interview. It was just a plain conversation, because literally you join us mid-conversation in this one, because we were chatting for a good sort of I think it was about 2.5 hours, 3 hours in total. And I've had to cut it down to just the chunk about the band, because we were talking about our lives and what we've done. And it was awesome. I loved it. And yeah, I hope you guys really enjoy it as well. But what I want you to do, if you haven't heard of Earthtone9 or haven't heard Earthtone9, what I want you to do is pause this right now. And then I want you to go onto one of the streaming services, and I want you to find Earthtone9 and their album Arc Tan Gent. That's ARCTANGENT, 3 separate words. Go the festival of the same name as well. So in case you're wondering, but go and listen to that. You won't believe that it's 20 years old, and I'm hoping you will find it as enthralling as I did. And yeah, please go do that now. They've got, they are, like I say, releasing a vinyl copy of this album. I don't know how many they've got left because it's only a limited run of 300, but I will be getting one. I have pre-ordered it. I managed to get a pre-order in, and it was the, the shut up and take my money meme, if you will. It's for the kids out there. It was one of those moments, and I'm looking forward to hearing that, and the Omega EP as well on there. But please go listen to it. Let me know if you've listened to it, because I want to know your thoughts on it. Because back in the day, I used to talk to people about it and used to get a lot of feedback. If you don't like it, I still want to hear from you about it. I want to find out, what wasn't there for you, just purely out of interest. But this was like, I'm very passionate about this album, and I just want to sort of like, see if anyone who hasn't heard it out there, because it is one of those albums that I think deserves to be heard by a lot of people into metal, British metal, and whatnot. And I'm rambling now because I'm kind of going off into the thing. But you join me and Karl mid-conversation. Enjoy. But no, seeing you guys actually a couple of years back, I got tickets for the Nottingham show with Pitch Shifter. Okay, yeah. It was just really cool seeing you and in the Blueprint as well as Earthtone9 and doing that. And that was a fun night because I brought my my stepdaughter with me, who was just, let's say 15, I think she was then. Okay. And she absolutely loved it. It's the first time, obviously, she's seen you guys. She'd heard us like talk about you and had music on and whatnot, but she really, really enjoyed it. And I can quite often like hear her playing your songs in her room. So, oh no way! She's got a nice little fan there. So she's great. She's now 17 and looking to go to university in a different country. That's crazy. Wow. Absolutely crazy. But what I was going to say, the sort of like, it's pretty standard interview stuff, really, on this front. And then, like, we'll just continue going, if that's all right. We'll start talking about the band and whatnot. But, 20 years. As of, is it September, isn't it? Yeah, it is. That's absolutely crazy from that album, because you, like, I can remember it because I was on your street team, for one. I was giving out stickers and CDs with both like sampler tracks on it and all that kind of stuff back when I, was younger and more agile and could go to shows that other than, ones that were local to me. I can go to like London constantly at that point, and it was cheap enough for me to do so. But yeah, how do you feel it being 20 now? Because I've kind of got like, the closest I've got at the moment was my band's album that came out in 2003. Funny enough, through CopPro, and that's just hitting the sort of like 17 mark. How does it feel like that? Because I remember how it felt when I saw the sort of 10 year. I was like, fuck, 10 years. But yeah, how's that feel for you?
It feels it's strange just because it's so much time. Yeah. But when I listen to the material, again, it feels like kind of a time capsule. It still feels quite fresh to me, but I guess I'm biased. But it feels like when I'm really concentrating and listening to the tunes, that I get transported back to where were we living, what were we thinking, what were the conversations we were having, what our ambitions were for that record. And so it's real, like I think the phrase that people use for like tastes and smells is a Proustian rush, but it's like not it's a sensory equivalent of that when I hear it.
Yeah.
All of those things that were going on in 2000 become really fresh in my mind. But I mean, it's one of those things where just generally time passes so quickly and you're often unaware of it, and then it takes like a delineation, like an anniversary, to just be like, wow, where did 10, 20 or 30 years go? So it's almost half my life.
Yeah. That's quite, I mean, it is literally half my life, to be honest. And it's crazy to think, because I've had it like over the past couple of years. Obviously, it's hit that mark because it's sort of around my. I'm 40 now, so obviously this hit around my 20s or on my 20s. And I've had a bunch of albums. Like I think when Pitch Shifter did their .com tour a couple of years ago, which we mentioned prior to this, that you guys were on. I mean, that album had just turned 20.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, and then obviously this year you got you guys' album turned 20. We got I think it's 1 Minute Silence, Buy Now Sell Later.
Probably. I mean, the White Pony must have come out in 2000.
Yep. White Pony as well, and it's just sort of like it's sort of it's hitting me in the feels, as the kids would say, of that time, because it transports you back. And I was like, ever since you guys kind of like mentioned the we'll get onto it in a moment, but the vinyl, I popped that album on. Because it's always been on kind of like random tracks here and there, along with sort of other stuff from your other two like previous albums, and it's just sort of like I just like listening through it, and you're right, you can sort of take yourself back. Where was I at that point? What was I doing? What was my, but what was I doing at 20? And it was like a time machine. And you're right, with the production value on it and the songs themselves, they do sound incredibly fresh still. And that's just sort of a testament to the sort of like the songwriting and obviously and the sort of like production ability that you guys had at your disposal at that point as well.
Yeah. I mean, it was a massive step up to go and work with Andy, and we were approaching things differently at that point. Just because the first record particularly, it was all about the spirit and the performance and playing as much as possible, particularly instrumentally live. And that had a ragged charm about it. And then we were also very much thinking, I guess the second record was a little more streamlined, but it was very much about taking apart and then using the power of repetition or subverting people's expectations. So doing things for half as long or twice as long as you would feel was natural, just to fuck with people. And that being part of the philosophy of those two bunches of songs. Whereas with Arc Tan Gent, we were just like, we wanted to be more direct. And so it became a little bit more streamlined. Some of those more wayward noise rock elements that I think are more prevalent on Low Def than on Off Kilter, apart from in some of the midsections of some of the songs, they're not really part of the equation anymore at that point. And so it lent itself to being, it needed to sound brighter and sharper than the previous two records, and that was something that we went in there with that in mind. And because we had a little bit more time as well, we did some pre-production with Andy so he could be familiar with the material beforehand, and because we respected him then and we respect him now because he's gone on to become a really big deal in the metal production world. We wanted his input to a greater extent than just the sounds. We wanted him to contribute to the arrangements and some of the sonics as well, and that's why that record's sounds really markedly different to the other two.
Yeah. I mean, it is a definite step up from the previous sort of like the previous two albums, production wise at least, and songwriting as well. There are some very different elements in there from what you previously had. So talking like going back to those first two albums, like you released them, like you were quite consistent. Like obviously, I think you had the first one was a sort of more of a bunch of demos and stuff put together and stuff like that. But you released that in '98, and then you released the second one in '99. And then you hit us with Arc Tan Gent in 2000.
Yes.
Like, was that like, did you have that planned out, or was it just purely because you were being productive and you just wanted to keep the sort of like momentum growing and show, or have that kind of like step?
Yeah, it was a few things. We just felt that, I don't think we would have described it in this way at the time, but the double-edged sword of being an indie band was that you can be nimble, but also you don't have the resources that you have with a larger label. So the idea of a touring cycle being 2 or 3 years long, that's only feasible if you have significant backing financially and in terms of resources. So as a kind of grassroots band, your primary means of reaching people is to do new things, because that meant at that point when there were fewer gatekeepers in the kind of pre-digital, pre-internet paradigm. If you do new material, then people will want to speak to you. So it's that whole thing about staying busy. And it was just abundantly clear to us that to do an album and then try and play shows in a fairly limited way for like 18 months, it kills the momentum that you achieve by putting out a record. So we were just like, well, given that sort of that songwriting spirit that I spoke to you about a little earlier, how challenging is it to write 10 songs a year and release 10 songs a year? It's just not. It's, you know, anyone who's committed to doing music and getting better and being a functional band could do that if that was what they wanted to. Yeah. And as long as they weren't getting too precious about the material and knowing that there's no such thing as perfection and that your ideas about what is great and isn't change over time, so you have to know when the thing's done, kind of thing. Yeah. So it felt quite natural to us, and it felt like a way to distinguish ourselves from other bands that were kind of trying to operate in that received wisdom album paradigm. And we were just like, damn, we're not Guns N' Roses. Let's get busy. Let's make music.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's sort of like, that's what struck me like back then as well. Cause it was like, you kind of expected, like some people expect a new like gadget every year, slightly upgraded, whatever, as we're talking about my job, just to put that sort of line in. But like expecting an album a year. Like just having that sort of like production, obviously it's not, I wouldn't say it's sustainable over sort of like maybe a sort of 10-year period. Well, it might be actually, thinking about it now, but was that sort of like after Arc Tan Gent, was that your sort of like ethos, if you will, or is it, now we can kind of like, we can tour the shit out of this and you've got more momentum. Because I remember at the time there was a lot more sort of like magazine coverage and whatnot. And you had a video for Tatouage Massi out as well, which I don't think you had a videos before, did you? Before that one? No,
that was the first promo video we'd made for a song.
And I've got the VHS of that somewhere, to be honest. Because, like I said, I was on that street team, I told you. And some of the perks of that street team was a free VHS with that video on it.
Wow, that's serious generosity on our part.
A signed promo CD as well, which I'm sure I've still got somewhere. And stickers. I love stickers. So lots and lots of stickers. But yeah, no, I was just sort of with that, like obviously knowing obviously what happened after that, you sort of went a couple of years without releasing anything. But was that sort of like just purely on the momentum side of things? Was that because you were getting offered these tours or these shows and, this sort of like the give and run, if you will?
I mean, well, I think it was it was our original intention to keep with that sort of rapidity of work, but it wasn't sustainable, as you just said. So most of us lived in the same house together, then we were touring together, then we were trying to write together, and so it was doing a lot of things with the same people, which there's always a sell-by date and a shelf life on that, you know what I mean? And then differences of opinion come up, and then if they're not talked about in a productive way, they become toxic and problematic. And, you know, because we were in our early to mid-20s at the time, that was kind of like the age span. I just don't think we were mature enough to cope with the pressure that we'd put on ourselves, and it ended up fracturing. But it was, I mean, we knew that because we had put more into the record in advance of it coming out, it felt like it could have a longer life. Yeah. But at the same time, our primary interest was always in writing music and releasing music. You know, we liked playing, but we didn't like touring that much, and we realised that when we did some of the longer tours that we did, that there are some guys that are just made for the road, because in some respects playing the same or a similar set night after night, it's like acting, it's like a theatrical performance. And you know, some people are very good at making the acting piece look like it's authentic and natural, but a lot of it is an act. You're trying to deliver it night after night, and we just found that we weren't those guys. And so at that point in time, where the primary means of telling the world about yourself was to go and play in front of people, that also burnt us out, and we weren't the sort of people that could go out for 6 or 9 months and just do the same thing night after night and paint on the happy or the angry face and do the same thing. So we felt frustrated by that, or at least some people in the band did. And I think we ended up having to cancel a few tours just because we were on the borderline of breaking up, and then it was like, let's try and take some space. Yeah. Let's go back to writing music, because that's what we all seem to care about. But we brought lots of the baggage that had happened previously into those writing sessions, so they just didn't feel great. And then, you know, the material that we wrote is Omega, and it feels like a breakup record to me when I listen to it now. It just seems so tinged with like sadness and resignation. Yeah. The songs are cool, but they've just got that melancholy about them. Yeah. There's like no rage in them. No, it's it kind of like, it did, like, at the time, it was that kind of like, I wouldn't say resignation, but it was that, it had that sadness, that, like you say, melancholy feel to it, that your other releases all had that, like, you know, not to use one of the EP's name, High Point, if you will, you know, where you hit that sort of like anger spot, or you hit that aggression spot, and then you sort of take it on a like, you know, a flight of melody or whatever. And yeah, no, that EP was definitely, it was kind of like it was one of those sort of, what's the word, from a fan's perspective, it was kind of like that love letter to that time, if you will, in as much as sort of like, you know, at that point you guys were splitting, and it was, you know, you weren't out on the road so much, if I remember rightly, and being sort of part of the sort of like the internet group at that point, if you will, the forum and whatnot, and you sort of, you know, you sort of got that vibe from it, and it's I don't know what else to say on that one. But yeah, no, I definitely felt that on there, on that release. And it was a sad moment when you guys decided to call it a day initially. So it was one of those things, and I wanted to go to, I think it was one of the farewell show that you guys had, but I couldn't make it because I was actually playing a show that night myself. It's a good reason not to be there. It was. I remember the show as well. It was a good show that we played. So, you know, it had a good, it wasn't like I played in front of 3 people and their dog in a pub, which, you know,
UK toilet venues are notoriously known for.
It can happen. It has been known.
It has been known. I can confirm. But yeah, I mean, at that point as well, like, you know, when you guys were sort of like in the height of Arc Tan Gent, let's take it back to that a little bit. And you were out on the road. I know you had some sort of like lineup changes and stuff like that, in as much as you brought Jamie in.
Yep.
And I knew Jamie from his previous band, Breakneck. It might have been one of his first bands, and then he was a Cubic Space Division, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's right.
So if you can remember, what was the relationship there? How did you sort of like get him involved?
He, I think we had played a few shows in Kent. Breakneck had been on the bill. He was a really cool guy. He was a great guitar player. He was a good singer. And when we'd done some shows, and David stepped in to help us out. And one of the things that we were thinking about with Arc Tan Gent was that there was a lot more going on vocally, and that it would be really valuable to possibly have 3 voices in the mix. So that was part of the reason that we asked Jamie to come in. But I think what we did rather unfairly, or rather, you know, slightly naively, was he didn't have any previous experience of playing bass, but we were just like, can you play bass? Do you want to play bass? and he saw it as an opportunity, so said yes. And then in the sort of long run, that didn't kind of work out at that time.
Yeah.
When he was in the studio tracking, and he was just like, the instrument he's playing on isn't going to cut it for this record. And because he was left-handed, it was difficult to get a bass.
Yeah.
For him to play on and be comfortable with, and so it was one of those things where it was quite accelerated in terms of the decision making, and so he didn't play on the record. Then he did the tour immediately after we'd recorded, but before the record came out.
Yeah,
and that was the first time that we'd stood on stage with him, and we were in a tour. And then after the first, I don't know, handful of shows, we just didn't feel like it was gelling with him on stage.
Okay.
And sort of there was a fluidity here, so we'd made the decision for Jamie to come in kind of like before we'd done a significant run of shows with Dave. So we went away and did like about 7 weeks with Kill to This.
Yeah. And
over that time, we built a really great rapport with Dave. We saw that he was like a really accomplished performer on stage and was a tight player. And so as we knew that the Dave bit was coming to an end, for Jamie to step in, we were already like, oh God, have we made the right decision? But I think it was just it was a symptom of, you know, trying to make smart professional decisions really rapidly without all of the facts in your 20s.
Yes. Yeah, I've been there. It's all right. It's common ground.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in a band. We've done that. We went through, oh my God, we went through so many drummers and other players as well. Bass player, in fact. Went through a couple of those. And it was a while till we found the right people. So,
yeah.
But yeah, no, I totally been there on that one. But also, like talking to guests and stuff on the album, sort of jumping back and forth here, but it's all right. You had Ishmael from Liberty 37 on there, on 2 tracks, in fact. Was it PRD Chaos and Yellow Fever?
Yep.
It was. Was it those 2? I keep thinking Walking Day for some reason. I don't know why, but but I'm right on those. That's excellent. How did that relationship sort of come in? Because obviously Liberty 37 at the time, they were kind of, you know, flying their own flag, if you will, on that front. Again, another sort of like solid Welsh band to come out of that area of the world. Seems to be quite a fertile like ground for a lot of bands, that area. But yeah, how did that come about?
Initially, one of our first ever London shows, like proper London shows, was at the Bull and Gate in Kentish Town, and it was put on by Organ, so Sean Worrell, and the we played last, and we naively thought we were headlining, but the actual headliners were this band called Applecore that turned, I think they were called Applecore, they turned into Liberty 37.
Okay.
So this was their London show to celebrate them signing to, I think it was, they were being looked at by Music for Nations, but I think ultimately they went with Beggars Banquet.
Yeah.
A bit hazy on the detail. And so we met them then, and we watched them, and we were just like, wow, this is a killer band, you know, had a sort of 90s alt rock vibe.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the 90s then, now I think about it.
It was.
But,
so they were very much a product of their time.
Vibe of the time. And yeah, I mean, they were really great people. And so we kind of struck up a friendship with them. I think we did a few other shows. But Owen and Ish really kind of hit it off. They did a side project, wrote a few songs together. I can't even remember if it came out, to be honest with you. They just did it for sort of personal enrichment, for fun, as a creative outlet.
Yeah.
And, you know, that continued for a couple of years. And then when we were recording or writing the material for Arc Tan Gent, Yellow Fever, just, it felt like the sort of material that would really suit Ismail's voice. And we'd always felt like we wanted to be a collective and bring people in who served the material best, rather than it just being this really rigid 5 people, you're the singer, you do the singing, the end of it kind of thing. And so it was trying to walk it like we talked it, in a way that we hadn't done before, because we'd never really brought guests in. And then with PRD Chaos, it was just a song that we had a cool refrain and a great chorus, and the verse riff, I think, it's got a swingy vibe to it, so it's either 3/4 or 7/8, or maybe it's just in 7. And I couldn't get my head around it and come up with a cool melody, and I felt like it needed to be melodic, because it was quite sparse. And we went into the studio, and we actually did Yellow Fever quite early on. And so just while Ish was here, he'd come down from Wales, and we were just like, dude, listen to this. Have you got any ideas for it? What do you think about it? And he put that thing down first take, and we were like, oh my goodness, that's amazing.
Amazing.
And, you know, originally it was like, well, you know, maybe we can modify it, we can change it, we can use that as a basis for it, but it was so perfect, we just left it as it was. So he ended up guesting on 2 songs, and that happened sort of quite organically, and it was pretty spontaneous, the decision to keep it there as it was.
Yeah. No, that's amazing, because like I was obviously fully aware of Liberty 37 and sort of being a reader of organ and whatnot from back then, and actually being featured in it eventually, which was great. When you used to be able to bribe your way into it, which was good. You have to send them weird and wonderful, like...
cat food was a top thing, wasn't it?
It was like cat food, and I can't remember what we sent him, but it got us in there. So it definitely wasn't money, so that was all good. But yeah, no, organ was... That's a shout, that is, because I've not heard... I remember Sean. We played shows for him as well in London with... I want to say Skin Lab, I think we played with.
Okay.
Again, you know, we were on kind of what would normally be headliner spot, but we weren't headlining. But yeah, no, it was really cool. It was, oh God, I'm going to have to dig out. I think I've got some of those CDs that he used to release.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I remember about him is just he was supremely passionate about music. He really gave a shit. And he loved to spread the word about bands that he cared about, and then give them a platform to be able to reach a new audience. So he wasn't just being a commentator and a critic. He was actually, you know, promoting. He was creating space for bands to connect with an audience. He was. It's quite a rare combination, and you know, he had really great taste and really good energy.
Yeah, totally. He was. I think it was the reason I got into polkas, to be honest. Back then, and we actually played a show with IMI, which I think was Polkas After Polkas. or at least it was the singer, I think. I can't remember the details. It's very hazy from back then. But yeah, no, I mean, he was one of those people that, like you say, he gave a shit about the music, you know, and if you were doing something that you know, if you're doing anything, really shout about it. And he was almost like what we call today a tastemaker, or influence. He'd probably hate this, to be honest with you.
I don't think he would be down with being called either of those things.
No,
but what you're saying is true. You know, he was one of those guys that did it with passion and conviction and had good taste and instinct. So people believed him and believed in him, and would listen to stuff that he vouched for.
Yeah. Definitely. I'm gonna have to seek him out, see if he's still doing stuff.
I mean, there is an organ magazine, I think it's called that, on Facebook. Okay. I don't know if it's still Sean doing it, but the writing style is very similar, and visually it looks like that stuff that he had going on through the 90s.
Yeah. I'll have to look that up, because that is definitely a name from the past that I haven't connected with for a while. So, yeah, definitely. So I'm sort of taking it back to Arc Tan Gent, because that's what we're here to talk about a little bit. Yeah. I just got to ask you this question, because I found this on one website, on Discogs, in fact, about a credit for the album, like someone who worked on it, that I had no idea whether this is true or not. So I'm going to either put myself out there and go, wow, I did some research and it was great, or it's just going to be, nah, nowhere near it. But Giz Butt, guitarist, Jaina Stark, Prodigy, etc., on Discogs has a credit for guitars on the album. Is that something you guys work with him? Like, did he come in and do some tracking, or?
He didn't play on the album, but Giz and Shop. Do you know what? I can't remember what the detail was. I think Andy had just worked on a record with them. Yeah. And we were having an issue with some tones, and I think they lent us some of their equipment. Okay. So I think we came up with some wordy thing like co-conspirators in all terrorism, some shit like that. But, you know, basically they helped us achieve the tones that we wanted to get on the record. Yeah. They didn't perform anything and they didn't write anything. Okay. But the record wouldn't sound like it did without their generosity. Okay, excellent. I just wasn't sure, because I saw it's the only site that references it. As far as, like I said, I'm sure probably the inlay may have something on it, but I was just like, is that something? Because I've spoken to Giz on and off for years. Just sort of in between, like him doing obviously like his band stuff back when, and now he's got Jaina Stark back together and all that kind of stuff. And I just never knew that little. Obviously, if it's just obviously gave you some sort of knowledge, or like say tones. But yeah, actually contributed in some way. I think that's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I wasn't there every day for the recording of the instrumental parts. Okay. So, I mean, it's within the realms of possibility that he might have been there and could have put something down, but I don't remember it. Okay.
That's fair enough. I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure there's an official credits thing somewhere. I don't know. Back then, things were slightly like it was written down maybe, but never documented online or archived anywhere. So, no, that's very. I mean, that could have fallen flat on my face. That could have just been one of those internet things where you look at it and someone edited Wikipedia. Yeah,
it's not a hard no. You're not fully incorrect.
But there's somewhere to look into it. Yeah. I might actually ask him himself, see if he did anything, if he can remember back then. So, but you also had Gemma Seddon on there as well. Yeah. She's a sort of a session drummer, from what I gather, from back then. You right?
Yeah, she was in a band whose name currently escapes me, from Derby. And again, we played there's a pub, I think it's called the Vic, or the Old Vic, that we used to play on every run of shows we did, just because it was the next city across from where we were based. Yeah. And her band supported us a few times. I think her brother played guitar in the band, and she played like Dave Grohl. Oh. It was just like incredible energy and like charismatic performance. And so when we were coming up with ideas for the record, it was like, oh yeah, it'd be really cool to have something instrumental. It'd be really, really good for it to be heavily rhythmic and to have a bunch of drummers on it.
Yeah.
And so she was just one of the first names that sprang to mind.
Cool. Yeah, because she went on, I think, I can't remember what she, like I say, there was a name for a band that I cannot remember. But I know it was more recently as well. She played in stuff.
Okay.
And, yeah. So,
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me because, I mean, she was a teenager at the time. She was really young.
Okay.
And she, maybe a bit rough around the edges, but just, she had great drumming instinct.
Yeah.
And so, it wouldn't surprise me if she's gone on to do other things.
Yeah, no, it was Slaves to Gravity was the band, I think it was. She was in that for a little bit, and that's sort of like where I remember like her name on that front. But yeah, at the time it was like obviously it was a kind of like I don't know if it was an unknown or not, or if I actually knew the band she was in. But I can't remember the name either. So. That sucks. So if she's listening, I'm sorry, Gemma. But yeah, I mean, what's it like throughout the album as well? You kind of like, I mean, with the first track, Tattoo Massey was the first one you hit us all with, and that's an absolutely, I mean, I'm going to say it's a magnificent song, to use that superlative.
Thank you.
And it was sort of like. It was kind of like this is what we are now as well, because it kind of had, like when it first hit us, it had that kind of starts off, nice and melodic, and then suddenly it just sort of bang hits you, and then it goes back to that melodic, and then it hits you again, and it's kind of trying to think of the words for it at the time. It was just I don't know. It was one of those tracks that I could have on repeat constantly, and I probably did, much to the annoyance of everyone around me. But, you shot a video for that as well. So obviously you guys felt that it was something that you wanted to lead with. So what was the sort of like, the sort of reasoning behind that? Was it because it was sort of more of a introduction to this album that you had behind it? Or was it just something you just suddenly thought, well, this song's just, it's got like video and like concentration track written all over it?
Yeah, it was a few things. I think... It was one of the first tracks that we wrote. It was one of those that came together sort of pretty naturally. And then when we included it on High Point, we were getting like really a positive response from press, just being like, oh, this is a massive step up for you guys. It's, it's got like a really big hook, something that could really be on radio. And it wasn't particularly that was exciting to us, but just the idea that we had something that was immediate that would connect with people as instantaneously as radio songs tend to was appealing to us because it would enable us to reach more people quickly. Yeah. And because all of that, I think High Point probably came out in March, so 5 or 6 months before Arc Tan Gent came out.
Yeah.
And so it just seemed to be gaining momentum on the back of that quite small interim release. And by the time we got to Arc Tan Gent, it just seemed to be a no-brainer. And there wasn't really anything on the album that combined all of the elements of what we do in such an immediate way. So, the moody down bit, the sort of somewhat Eastern, mysterious sounding parts, and then the super aggressive bit, and then an anthemic chorus.
Yeah.
Those are, if you were going to create a Build My Earthtone9 song, those are the bits that you would have to consider, for it to sound authentic. And, there was other great material on the album. But it was either too gnarly, or it was there was something controversial in there lyrically, or or it was, all the songs were really short, almost like too short for radio, like punk rock 2-minute songs kind of thing. And so that was just the one where like the Venn diagram of how do you choose a lead song lined up over it, and there wasn't anything else that was in consideration, I don't think.
Okay. No, that's cool. I mean, for a song that's like, I mean, it's about 5.5 minutes.
Yeah, it's a bit on the long side.
You know, and for a radio track, that's exceptionally long. Like, you know, I know there's a whole thing, like, if you've seen the Queen film, and they talk about, you know, having, like, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, they got past it with Bohemian Rhapsody and whatnot. But obviously in sort of, like, this day and age, a lot of, like, it's a lot more pressure to have that sort of, like, 3.5 minute sweet spot, if you will. So did you ever consider like doing a radio edit or anything like that for it, or was it just like you're going to take it as it is and play it?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like we were being fuck you about it. It just, at that point for us, you know, it wasn't like we had a dedicated plugger to go and pitch it to radio. We didn't think that was like a serious avenue for us to gain a lot of traction. It was just that we knew that we had a song that had a really good hook to it, it kind of encapsulated what we were, and it wasn't like 8 or 9 minutes long. So it was the one that fitted the bill.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest with you, if our manager at the time had said that you need to consider editing it and these are the reasons why, we would have heard him and come and made a decision on it.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't have just dismissed it, because by that point, we were less interested in being like really contrarian, and it was just like what's going to serve the band, what's going to help us reach the most people in a way that feels authentic to who we are and what we're about, and that's why we had a record label and a management team to help us navigate those waters, because we were a band, we didn't have all of those experiences to draw upon to make those kinds of decisions.
Okay. No, I was just curious because, like I say, 5.5 minutes is long for even a music video, bar anything Tool release. Or Metallica, for that matter.
You know, at the time we were just like, could Evil Crawling Eye do it? Could Star Damage for Beginners, you know, do it? But they were just they were balls out songs and that didn't contain the sort of moody, brooding element that we felt was an important component of what we do.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's definitely, like I say, it does encapsulate everything that you guys are, I feel, especially from like the sort of like the previous two releases as well. And then like for me, that song, I mean, if I remember, like High Point as well, actually. It was, it definitely was the track that kind of like led the way on that front. And then obviously the rest of the album, I mean, I love, like the tracks with Ishmael. I really like both those, PRD and Yellow Fever. And what was the other one? Star Damage. That's a fantastic track. In fact, the whole album, I love it. I wouldn't be talking to you otherwise. But yeah, it's just, like now 20 years on, you're looking at like looking at it from that far off, it's like it has stood the kind of like it's like it hasn't aged, like it has aged, as in, but not aged badly, if that makes sense. So you know, obviously it has aged physically 20 years on, but trying to get the words out here, but it's you know,
can do it, Barnaby.
I know, I'm trying. I will the way it will come, don't worry. But no, just like thinking about it now 20 years on, because like for me 20 years it's a long time, you know. Back then, like I say, it took us back, and back then I wasn't married, I hadn't even met my future wife at that point. I was like, you know, able to go to countless shows. I mean, I saw you guys, I think I counted it at one point. It must have been around the 30 mark in various venues around the country, which is ridiculous thinking about it. But like you played the West End Centre in Aldershot a fair few times.
And you were on the bill?
Yeah, it was for a Blueprint show.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, that was a Blueprint show. Yeah, because it was you and Mark Claydon were there and everything, and I was like, oh my god, that's the guy from Pitch Shifter. Oh my god, that's the guy from Town. And that's where I got the video from as well. Of you doing Vitriolic with us.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I don't think we ever played with Earthtone9.
Okay.
Played with the Blueprint. I think we played with Twin Zero. I think that was in, I can't remember. It's either Bournemouth or I think Choff might have booked that. I think it was Bournemouth.
Yeah.
But neither Earthtone9. I don't think we even played a festival with you guys, if I can remember rightly. But I managed to obviously see, like say, West End. We, as a band, made a trip down to the Joiners to see guys there play. I remember most of these shows, like London, Astoria 2, Garage. Oh shit! There was so many. There was a few. Even actually, at one point, we did a big meet up with the Forum in Sheffield. I think you played a rock sound thing at Sheffield Uni. And we all ended up sleeping on a student's floor in dorms. So it's a very uncomfortable night. That's what I remember from it being very uncomfortable. But yeah, no, just like obviously from like the people I met through you guys, like friends wise, I'm still keeping in contact with some of them over the years, which is really cool. So like 20 years on, this is madness. But yeah. You guys are doing a vinyl reissue. We're finally getting onto this. Which to me was music to my ears because I've always wanted something of yours on vinyl, and I am a vinyl. I prefer that format to a lot of like the others. I do still obviously buy CDs. I subscribe to one of the music streaming services, but that's purely out of sort of more because I still DJ rock clubs. I want to sort of stay in touch with a lot of what's going on there as well, because I don't get sent everything for promos and whatnot, which is a shame. But to anyone listening out there that doesn't send me stuff. But yeah, no, vinyl. So what was the sort of like, was that a long sort of like a plan that's been in the works for a while? Or was it just kind of how are we going to celebrate 20 years? Obviously with COVID, a show you were going to do on the namesake festival, Arc Tan Gent, you were actually going to play the album in its entirety. Was that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been releasing stuff on vinyl has been something that we've toyed around periodically, just because it's my preferred format. But what we'd never got a handle on until quite recently was just how many of our fans also like vinyl and will be willing to pay for Earthtone9 vinyl.
Yeah,
and then it had been bubbling around for a while, and then it really became something that was more of a priority when we realised that the primary way we were going to celebrate Arc Tan Gent was going to get pulled, which was the festival appearance.
Yeah.
And then it's just it's morphed into a cool. In a way, it's it's a more permanent or more tangible celebration of it to re-release it in a slightly different way, because the artwork that we had done at the time, the front cover was something that we had to pull together quite last minute. So just this opportunity to reevaluate the visuals that were associated with the record, update them, and also think about them because they're going to be on 12 inches of paper instead of 4 inches of paper.
Yeah.
Just was a cool opportunity. And it went from being like fuck, no festivals to, well, we could do the vinyl thing, to this vinyl thing is going to be really cool and is in lots of respects more exciting.
That's amazing. I've always wanted to release something on vinyl. Never had the opportunity. I'm working on it at the moment, but I've never had anything of my own done on that. And it's a format that I absolutely adore because it's just something that reminds me of my childhood, of messing around with records that my dad had, or I had, or my brother had, because he was a mobile DJ. So he had like 7 inches and stuff everywhere.
Oh, okay.
And obviously going through, you know me from sort of doing sort of more DJ related stuff. I've got a set of turntables right next to me now, and that's like I bought recent music that's come out. So Enter Shikari's new album, for instance. I think I've got like Korn's new one and all that kind of stuff, and I've even gone back, bought some Deftones, and always sort of participate in record store day, so I always pick up at least one release of someone's.
Yeah.
Just of the new stuff, but obviously I've got a whole bunch of stuff as well, just stuff that I inherited from my dad, and like classic vinyl. But it's just a format I love. Like obviously the sort of what I do to vinyl is sort of very different. I'll scratch it, I don't do that with the classic albums, don't worry. But as tempting as it is. But, you know, it's sort of like, I just love that format, and like having you guys actually put something out, because like I remember back when you did your actually I was going to ask you why, like, it was part of this question anyway, but when you did your crowdfunding album for number 4, it struck me that you didn't do vinyl then, you know, in sort of like as an option. You know, because you had like various, obviously, you know, you get this, get like a art print, you get, you know, the usual sort of stuff from Kickstarter and stuff. What stopped you doing the sort of, obviously I know you're using the pre-orders as sort of mainly the sort of like cash generation part of it, but what stopped you doing sort of a Kickstarter this time round?
It was partially that our preferred platform had made some mistakes and so was no longer a going concern, and so it felt a little bit like that crowdfunding using an intermediary has got a bit of a bad reputation, because that pledge folded and took a lot of money with it, and so it left bands without access to the funding they needed, and fans deprived of the material that they had kind of paid to get. And so we were just trying to look for a way that was really simple and could be pretty transparent and wouldn't be like a faff for lots of people. Our experience with crowdfunding before was that at that point in 2013, quite a lot of our fan base weren't comfortable with the idea of paying for something on pre-order and then getting it a long way down the line. And also they wanted to kind of go and get it from a record store, possibly to support a local independent, or just because for convenience. I'm not sure which. But, you know, we're 7-8 years down the road now, and you know, much more stuff's bought online. Much more stuff is that sort of, I feel like Patreon and those sort of helping creatives to continue their creative work platforms, that model has become something that's much more in the public consciousness now. So maybe there's not the skepticism about prepaying.
Yeah, I think with some of them, like, people obviously had things of even the sort of like prepay thing, like I'm using the brand Kickstarter as the main one here, but there are obviously other formats or other platforms to do that on, but some of them don't refund you if it doesn't reach its goal as well. So I think there's been a lot of there's been a few where I think people have backed various things. The person who's obviously, you know, putting these pieces of art together or whatnot are, you know, they're getting what's kind of there, but then they have to do another one to generate them more money, or, you know, there's some of them where if it does fail, then you get refunded. Like, it doesn't reach that amount, so as long as the person, you know, is smart enough not to have put the money down straight off the bat to say, I'll definitely get it back on the Kickstarter on that front. But yeah, no, you're right, a lot more people are sort of like comfortable buying online. I think it's more, you know, people I guess at that point weren't used to the sort of like a pre-order situation either. They probably want to hear it before they buy it. And obviously now you can go onto Spotify and it's there, or any other streaming service. And I mean, our other experience with crowdfunding was also that it was the recommendations were that you have a suite or a menu of options, and then at the point of fulfillment, because we were doing it all ourselves, it was enormously complicated. It's like, there are 10 people that have bought the album and a t-shirt and a poster and whatever. So it went from shipping a single item to someone that wanted it to this entire range of things that was a little bit cumbersome on the back end. So just doing a record and people who want records buying the record, and then I placed the order today, I'll get the test press in a month's time. I'll probably give a couple of those away or do some sort of competition, but it means that I can share the process with the people that are now on the purchased mailing list, just so they know where we're at. And then I can share more of the artwork with them. So it can be an interactive and somewhat exclusive thing without the complexity of
there being an entire range of things that people are choosing.
Yeah.
And that, personally, I like that.
No, that's definitely is the best way of going, I think, on that front. And actually, I'm going to say thank you for this now, because I backed for when you did the crowdfunding thing, and I moved to different countries. And you sent it to that different country for me. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Because it was initially, I think it was still in England when I did it, and obviously by the time it was ready and done and all that kind of stuff, I had moved. So. But I got it out there, and I've still got the I've got the artwork thing in a frame.
Oh, cool!
It was hung in my sort of like US studio, if you will, that I had where I had my sort of like podcasting set up, and at the moment it is in a box full of other frames of things. But we're actually putting stuff up in the house soon, so got to get those hooks up. So, but it'll go up in there. But no, that was really cool. And also, like going back to the artwork for Arc Tan Gent, the vinyl, you working with Matt Grundy.
Yeah, that's right.
Those. And did he do the original art? Was that?
No, the original artwork was done by a guy called Ian, whose stage nickname was Bob, but he was one of the guitar players in Snub.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Really great graphic designer. Came up with the panel for each song, which is going to be included in the upgrade or the reboot of the artwork.
Nice.
But we were really wrestling with the front cover. And what actually happened was we had an idea that we felt represented the album. You know, it's quite a literal representation of Arc Tan Gent.
Yep.
And when Bob saw it, he was like, "Oh, that's cool. It seems quite iconic to me, but it is quite simple and stark." And we were just like, "Well, we'll go with that." But then our distribution company felt really strongly that it wasn't representing the album, and that they had really high hopes for shipping in mainland Europe, where, you know, France and Germany and Spain and Italy, where there's a language barrier, the album covers need to pop and sometimes be quite literal and represent what the album was.
Yeah.
And they just felt it was too abstract. So the original front cover is a bit of an amalgamation of a couple of the internal graphics for each song with the Leonardo da Vinci proportions of man sort of over the top.
Yeah.
But and it had to be pulled together quite quickly. And, you know, it served the purpose. It was good. It was the best that could be done given the circumstances. But we were never fully happy with it, just because the background is really black, so it feels very two-dimensional. I mean, obviously it is two-dimensional, but it doesn't feel like it has depth to it.
Yeah.
And so this was just, an opportunity to, with more time, more resources, technology's changed. Matt is a very creative thinker and very good realizer of ideas. And so it was a cool opportunity for me to work with someone who's been an artwork and a musical collaborator for the best part of 2 decades, but has never been a part of Earthtone9.
Yeah.
And now he's kind of like a part of that Earthtone collective because he's done this really killer artwork for this release.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's I've seen the pictures you guys post up online, and I actually Matt had actually designed a front cover for one of Zero Cypher's albums as well.
Oh, okay.
Our last album, in fact. But yeah, back when he was sort of trying to get a foothold in that sort of side of things, like coming out of Pitch Shifter and all that kind of stuff, and obviously with you guys in the Blueprint and whatnot. And yeah, no, he's absolutely, like, I mean, the work he did for us was amazing. It's out of the sort of like 3 albums that we've got, it's definitely my favorite artwork on that front.
Great.
And yeah, I mean, it's nothing kind of it's basically based, what I wanted, it was based on, the album was called Juggernaut, but I wanted it sort of based on, you ever remember the movie Jewel?
Yes.
It was a Spielberg movie. The guy gets chased by a truck. Mm-hmm. But I kind of wanted that on the front. as the sort of artwork and stuff, and he did an absolutely magnificent job with that, and gave it kind of a little metal tinge with a skull coming out the sort of grate at the front and stuff. So I was like, that's amazing, and like he didn't charge us very much at all either, which was like ridiculous compared to like maybe what he should have been paid. But like he said, he was just trying to get like artwork out there and all that kind of stuff. So like, you sure is that, you know, I'm not going to say exactly how much, but it just wasn't very much compared to what you would normally pay a graphic designer. So
well, he's an in-demand man now.
Oh, good. I'm glad. That exposure pays off again. No, I'm not going to go there. But when do you plan to have obviously the album kind of like, have you got a tentative kind of like release date for it, or is it sort of like you say, you're getting the test pressings back in a month's time? I did pre-order it myself as well, so
oh nice, thank you so much.
As soon as I saw the thing pop up, I was like, I didn't even ask the wife, I just went straight in.
You're crazy.
I know, madness. But she totally understood. She was like, yeah, that's fine. So I did okay with it afterwards. But yeah, no, like obviously with it as well, we'll talk about, like, you've included the Omega EP in it. Mm-hmm. Is that like on the end of it, if you will, like after Binary?
It's the first three sides are Arc Tan Gent, and then the fourth side is Omega.
Cool.
So what I'd never paid a huge amount of attention to is just how short albums are that are on vinyl.
Yes.
So when we were working out the track split, it became apparent that the album is somewhat slightly too long to go on two sides of an album, and so we shifted it over to double, and we were just like, oh, should we have it play at 45 RMP so it's really high quality? But double vinyl was expensive to produce, which meant that the retail price was more, and so we wanted it to feel like it was good value. Yeah. And you know, the Omega EP is, you know, it was widely available upon release, but it hasn't been kept widely available. So some of our fan base were just talking about the possibility of extra tracks when the dialogue was happening. Yeah. And Omega seemed to be the one that most people were most excited about having on there. And for me, it struck a chord because Matt did the artwork for Omega on CD. So the idea of it was just another connection.
Yeah, no, I mean, Omega, like, talking on that front, I got to start say, like, Amnesia, the first track off there, is actually, it's like, it's mine and my wife's song, if you will.
Oh, beautiful.
So, yeah, you've kind of hit that area as well, just to sort of give you a heads up on that one. But yeah, that's like, it's like our song, if you will.
Nice.
It was everything bar Our First Dance, so which went to David Bowie. So I'm sorry about
that. I mean, I don't mind losing out to David Bowie. That seems fair enough.
But yeah, no, it was like, yeah, it's a great song, and I'm looking forward to hearing those on vinyl as well. So, have you obviously when preparing for a vinyl release, did you think of remixing, or have you had to remix the album slightly to work on vinyl?
Not remixed, no. I mean, just because this album's been in the can for so long, and it was recorded just as Pro Tools was becoming the primary means of recording music, like moving over from DATs. But it seemed to us pretty unlikely that we'd be able to find the unmixed things. You know, the idea that Andy Sneap's just got like a drive with 20-year-old music that he did in 2 or 3 studios ago just seemed too remote. So the initial plan was just to press from the CD, but then through having conversations with the pressing plant and some friends that have put vinyl out, you know, there are some frequencies that get picked up and vinyl responds to very differently. So we had a guy called Dave Draper, who's worked with the Wild Hearts and a few other artists, just he's a specialist in this sort of work where you just dial down a few of the frequencies to make it more I don't know if appropriate is the right word, but to mean that it's the best possible sound tailored for vinyl.
Yeah.
So we've been using the word remastered, but
okay.
I'm not sure if it's fully remastered, but certainly there have been some adjustments to the frequencies to make sure that it's not needle jumpingly loud,
yep.
or that the cymbals sound brutal, or that the bass shakes the needle off the grooves.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's cool. I mean, yeah, because I know there's a different process, because like I said, I'm looking into doing something vinyl-wise, but yeah, I know there's a sort of like, if you had the masters, then you can mix it for it, but yeah, I was aware you can sort of like tailor the frequencies that you do get additionally on vinyl, or at least from a CD to a vinyl. You can, yeah, you can kind of adapt it and give it like, and I think they do call, I think the official term is remastered. I think that is the official term for it, but I'm sure it's something else. But yeah, no. So was that a difficult process for them? Obviously, being sort of something that's, I know they sort of like generally like release stuff first time on vinyl. You know, you get bands that have never released on it like yourselves, and they obviously managed to convert it. Was it a particularly strenuous like effort for it, or is it something that was quite easily done?
No, I mean, the process was pretty simple. As long as you've got 44.1 files, so like WAV or WAV file quality, then a remastering engineer can work from those. If they've already been mastered, there are limits to what they can change.
Yeah.
But it's significant enough that it will mean that it's kind of optimized for vinyl.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, I'm going to look forward to it. Like I said, I ordered it. I think it was within 2 minutes of you putting up the post. So
yeah, great.
On that front.
Well,
go on.
I was just going to say one thing you did ask was when we're planning to have it out. And
yes.
The reason that we've done this kind of this far out is. In an absolutely ideal world, I would mail it to everybody on the 26th of September, which is the 20th anniversary of the day of release of Arc Tan Gent.
Yeah.
But there are some variables with production, and so they're basically saying it can take between 7 and 10 weeks, depending on how quickly they turn around the test press and how busy the factories are. And then also the other variable is whether we see an escalation in COVID.
Yes.
So right now we did it this early, so we've given it every possible chance of being able to do what we want to do, which is get it to everyone at the very end of September. But I think on the pre-order we had said the 2nd of October, which is the first Friday in October.
Yeah.
But yeah, my gold standard would be to get it to everyone on the day that Arc Tan Gent came out 2 decades earlier.
I was going to say that'd be amazing if you can, because obviously, like I say, there are.
I would love it, dude. I would love it.
So, I mean, with that, I mean, I know you've increased the you were originally going to do 250. Yeah. And I saw that you've increased that to 300 now because of the demand. Do you know if that's going to, like, is there more demand on top of that, or is that just a very recent
I mean, it's hard to say. When we sort of got an initial read on this, it was just it was a Facebook thread. Hey guys, how many of you would buy it?
Yeah.
Arc Tan Gent if it was out on record, and I feel like about 280 people gave it the thumbs up or said me.
Yeah.
But you know what it's like with Facebook stuff. You can. Sometimes people say yes, but their circumstances will change.
Yep.
Sometimes it's a soft yes. So we were being pessimistic realists about how many yeses would actually convert into an order. And we were wrong. We were pleasantly wrong.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not going to be one of those things where we endlessly tag on more and more. This seems like about the right amount for it to be manageable for us doing things as a cottage industry.
Yeah.
Also, the way we've presented it in a particular way, and then for it to just turn into this never-ending, we'll just keep repressing it. That's not in the spirit of how we announced it. So yeah, we're going to do these 300. I'm sure it'll be enough, and it'll be fantastic to sell all 300 of them, given how many of our fans like vinyl.
Yeah,
I think there's just like a loud minority that are always calling for vinyl.
Yes, we are.
which is absolutely fine. Yeah, this seems like the right thing to do, and we're going to go through the process. And I'm excited about doing the other 2 records, but it feels premature to start talking about those before we've delivered this release.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I if you do the other 2s, I'll get them as well. So you definitely got one sale on those. But cool. Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to it. I really don't want to hear what it sounds like translated to vinyl, because I mean, obviously you sort of like you obviously know that sort of side of things, and there is a different feel to it. When you do have something on there, there's a different kind of it's not the ground noise. I know that's the sort of big thing that people go on, but it's just sort of there are a lot more frequencies you can pick up, and a lot more things that go unheard for years until someone digs that vinyl out. And then, like, especially with like the sort of like when you go back to sort of like some of the big classic bands like Pink Floyd and all that kind of stuff, to sort of name the big ones, you can go around, you can, like, obviously they release stuff in quadraphonic and stuff, so there's always something you're going to miss if you don't have if you don't have the 20 speaker setup or whatever they've got. But yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to hearing it, and and hopefully seeing you guys if you are planning any kind of like additional live shows. Obviously, I know Arc Tan Gent was your one this year. That unfortunately has been. Are you still planning to do that next year, do you think? Yeah,
I mean, we said yes to it.
Yeah.
I mean, the organisers and our management have just said we're looking to move the entire bill to next calendar year, and so we're down to do that for sure.
Give it a 21st birthday celebration.
Yeah.
And it's legal to do almost anything at that point. So, which is even more, like, every time I think about these album like ages and stuff, it's crazy. So, but I'm going to let you go in a moment, if that's all right. You've been absolutely fantastic having a chat for me this long.
It's been a pleasure to talk to you, dude.
No, it's been great to catch up and stuff as well, like beforehand, and hopefully, I'll see a lot more of you as and when the situation allows. So, because I intend to go out to more shows and stuff. I want to go see, I'm going to go see Pitch Shifter again next year. So
cool.
So we'll see on that one. I'm going to travel up to Nottingham again, actually, because
oh, nice.
I really enjoyed going to Rock City for the last one, and I just I don't know. As much as I I don't like London, so I don't want to go to London. And I found that it costs just as much to go to Nottingham from here. So,
right,
if I drive up and get a hotel room, like a cheap hotel room, if I get it enough in advance, like going to London still 30 something quid, then food and whatever, inflated prices. But last time I went back and when we went to the one a couple of years ago that you guys were playing in, and met up with like Stevie B and Liam Power and all the people from back then who were on the message boards and stuff. But obviously we've kept in touch over years. Like Liam's he's quite an accomplished drummer. He's out playing with servers and all that kind of stuff. And obviously Stevie B, he's
just doing his thing.
He's always been there, So he even came over to Florida to see me, actually.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. I got a picture of him and me and his good lady at the house we owned over there. But he was over there, went to Orlando for a holiday, and he came all the way over to Tampa. And that's
so cool. It's just, that's one of the things I like most about this whole revisiting thing. Is just when I hear that people have got lifelong friendships out of a shared enjoyment of a band that I did once.
Yeah.
And that there's so much people associate the music that we made with really formative things in their lives. it's like a bookmark and a soundtrack. It's that's really cool.
Yeah. No, it definitely is. And from someone that's got that, it definitely is. But what I'm going to do, we're going to end with my sort of like my standard ending to my podcast, if you will. So I don't know if you've ever listened to anything I've done before, but what I do, I've got these generic questions that always finish it off. But the first one is, what I want to find out are your 3 top albums, all right, that really influenced the musician that you've become. So the one that made you want to pick up a microphone and sing, the one, the one that sort of like just influenced you in that way to sort of shape you into the sort of musician that you are today.
Just one, gosh.
Well, 3. If you got 3.
Okay. So 3 albums for each. Right. So, I mean, I would say probably, like the earliest thing where I was just like, I really like heavy music was Saxon, strong arm metal.
Nice.
The record that really made me think about what it could mean to be a musician and a performer was End of Silence by Rollins Band.
Nice.
And then I mean, something that an album also of that era where I just had such incredible energy and rage and groove to it was the first Clutch album as well. All those things sort of hit in the latter part of my teens, apart from the Saxon record, which came out when I was about 12 or something. But those are like, I would say there's probably albums that perhaps are more meaningful or I have more of a connection to now, but those are like real strong. I remember what I felt about music when I listened to them and making me think that I want to be in a band.
Nice. Yeah, Saxon, I mean, like, I actually got to speak to one of the original members on this podcast, actually, quite a while ago, when they were doing all the reissues. And that was a big moment for me, because I'm like, I used to love this band. Like, it was just sort of, I'm not going to call it silly metal, but it was just sort of that kind of traditional British metal. It had a certain, like, rhythmic kind of, like, weird, like, tribalism to it, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much of its time, but, I'm a real sucker for R&B, boogie, kind of rock and roll.
Yeah.
And so I really like mid-period Status Quo. I really like AC/DC. And Saxon had that on their first couple of records.
Yes.
And, Denim and Leather.
Yeah.
Just that sort of era is killer.
Yeah.
They moved things around a bit, and now they've become a little bit more of a power metal band, which is, it's fine. It's still their version of metal, but it's that stuff that they did in 79, 80 and 81 that I absolutely adore and still do.
Yeah, no,
and the band's played on is one of the greatest songs of all time.
Definitely. It was Graham Oliver I had on the show. He was one of the original founding member, I think, guitarist.
Yeah, he was.
And they re-released, it was the Denim and Leather album, Crusader, and Power and the Glory. It had like vinyl re-releases, like splatter vinyl and whatnot. But it was really cool just to speak to. I know he's not in the band anymore, and there's obviously, I think there's some bits between them. But it was just really cool to like actually speak. That's what I love doing this podcast, because I get to speak to people that have like had some kind of influence on me over the years within music, and new bands as well, ones that I've just sort of gotten into and really enjoying their music. And it's kind of opened my, like, especially to new music, it's really opened my eyes, which is really cool, because it's like a lot of the time I can stick to the same thing as a lot of people do.
Totally.
But, having, like, obviously going back and listening to the people that I'm speaking to and sort of finding out what makes them tick, and then listening to new bands and sort of seeing where they're coming from. Like, at the moment, there's a lot of bands that I'm interviewing, and their influences are like Linkin Park and things like that. which
right.
for me, like I was sort of obviously, you know, of that age when they came out, and it was like the rule of cool was not to like them, and things like that. So it's that kind of like, oh wow, so these guys were like the 13, 14-year-olds when I was that age, and they were being heavily, that was the gateway drug to them liking Hatebreed and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So it really does work, you know, that far on. But no, just going back and like I've had like guys from Yes, I've had oh god, who else? I've even had Tiffany on the show.
Oh wow,
from the 80s and Mid-Yaw.
Yep.
It's crazy, and like Moody Blues and all that kind of stuff. So it's really weird, like mixture of music, but it's absolutely fantastic. Like listening to these people, like just have their stories, you know.
Yeah.
They've all got their stories and stuff, and it's just great. But yeah, we got totally off track there. Rollins Band, love Rollins Band. Yep, and Clutch. I've seen that band a few times live as well, and absolutely amazing. Just got this like real kind of raw energy about them still. Yeah,
and I mean they morphed so much between their first and their second album. I mean the rootsy, bluesy, jammy thing that they do now is just not where they were when in the early 90s, when it sounded like rock and roll Helmet almost. Yes. You know, it was very there was a lot of repetition in there. I guess it was characterized primarily by simplicity, but it didn't feel bluesy, and it was just the sound of his voice is just like otherworldly, you know what I mean? It was so gnarly and so aggressive.
Yeah.
And now he's mellowed that, but his voice is still like really thick and resonant and just has a depth to it that you don't really, not many other singers have that.
No, totally. Yeah. No, they like, it's kind of got that like initial like raw kind of, like you say, like kind of like had a raw kind of punk rock element to it, but not. Yeah, I know what you mean. I just can't put it into words. But no,
that's why there's music.
Exactly.
You don't need to put it into words because the music is there.
Exactly, it'll tell me. So anyone, go listen to Clutch. And Earthtone9, go get some streams on that. But yeah, no, finally, last question. What are your hobbies away from music? So when you haven't been teaching and writing and performing and releasing vinyl at the moment, what do you kind of do to kind of unwind? What are your sort of like hobbies or pastimes?
Martial arts, Olympic weightlifting, yoga, meditation, gardening, growing things.
Nice.
I'm a permaculture designer, and then reading.
Cool. Anything in particular at the moment? What are you only reading anything in particular at the moment? That's, or you just sort of like make your way through a lot of different.
Make my way through quite a few different things. So I've just finished reading through all of my Hellboy comics.
Cool.
Currently reading a book called The Overstory by Richard Powers, which is amazing. I've got The Wisdom of Insecurity by Alan Watts on the go.
Nice.
And I'm also reading a book called The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer. So some kind of personal development stuff, some fiction, and then some graphic novel kind of stuff.
Nice. It's a good mixture. It's always good to mix it up like that. I've been reading. I've only had 2 books on the go recently. I've just finished one of them, so I've only got one left now. But, mine was the new Max Brooks novel, De-Evolution.
Okay.
He was the guy who did World War Z and the Zombie Survival Guide.
Oh, yeah.
He's also Mel Brooks' son, weirdly.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, he's written a couple of survival books, obviously World War Z, one of them. He did a Minecraft one for the kids, which was really good, actually. And he just did this one. It's kind of a Bigfoot story. And it's sort of done in the style of like a documentary, if you will. So people like reading the notes of people there or video recordings of people in this situation and all that kind of stuff. But that was really cool. And I've got a Richard Morgan novel as well. He's a sci-fi writer. He did Altered Carbon was his sort of biggest thing.
Yep.
That's now been turned into a TV show. But yeah, I'm reading one of his books at the moment. and for the life of me, I can't remember the name of it. I only had it in my hands a moment ago. Anyway, it's really good, and I can't remember the name of it.
I'll check out. I'll just put in Altered Carbon Writer, and it'll come up with all the stuff.
Yeah, he's got a whole bunch of books out, but yeah, it's another sort of like sci-fi kind of Blade Runner-y type style dystopian thing. So it's really cool. And yoga, I'm just getting into yoga.
Yeah, it's the best, dude.
I've basically, because I've lost a lot of mobility, which has really shocked me recently. I think it might have been, I can't blame lockdown for it, because it was obviously something set in before it. But I've lost a lot of flexibility and like mobility and stuff. So I've started yoga, just sort of basic stuff online. But I've got a yoga mat. I've made an actual like effort to do stuff. Like my kids got me like a voucher for Amazon for Father's Day, and I used that to buy the yoga mat. So
nice.
That was kind of like, you know, the the effort I've put in. I've been doing sort of like sessions of about half an hour to 45 minutes like every other day at the moment. But I've managed to hurt my hip, so I'm like kind of waddling, but I'm trying to do stuff that doesn't involve my hip so much at the moment. So see if I can get my upper body to kind of or at least do some limited mobility stuff. So, yeah. But yeah.
Well, there's Yoga with Adrian is a really great channel on YouTube.
Yeah.
There's a lot of free content on there. She's a really great teacher and practitioner. So that was my jump-in point.
Okay.
And I do mostly home practice as well.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'll look at that, because I've been looking for a good outlet. I've been looking at there's one called DDP Yoga, which is like an ex-professional wrestler set up his own like yoga practice, and helps like obviously wrestlers that have crippled themselves over the years to kind of like walk and be mobile again and stuff. And it's just because I listen to a lot of podcasts involving wrestlers that they tend to advertise on there. But no, I'm looking for free content, because that's a subscription service. So and I don't have that kind of like spare cash at the moment, but anything that's free to kind of get me into it, and then I'll go from there. But yeah, if that, I'll check that out on YouTube. So is it Yoga with Adrian? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Excellent. I'm definitely going to check that out. Awesome. Carl, thank you very much, man.
You're very welcome. It's great to talk to you again, dude.
Yeah, it was really cool. And like I said, hopefully, like once things get back to some kind of, I'm not going to use the word normal, but when it gets to some kind of like way where we can socialise and actually go out to things and stuff, and hopefully see you at some shows and whatnot, and
absolutely,
you know, all that kind of good stuff. And have a good rest of your evening. And like I said, hopefully I'll see you around soon. I may be down in Brighton at some point. My brother lives in Worthing, so you know.
Yeah, if you're down this way, I'll shoot me a message.
Yeah, I'll let you know. Cool. All right, man. Have a good rest of your day, and good luck with everything.
Thanks, buddy. Take care.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.